Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Valentine's Day. What a bunch of bullshit that is, huh? A saint's day to basically this guy was a bit of a heretic according to some accounts. I can't recall what particular heresy he was espousing, but in any case, the Romans nailed him. And somehow all this stuff turned around, and frankly I don't really give a crap. Give me a break. You know, simply people call it a holiday. It's not a holiday. Well, I suppose it would be a holy day in the sense of a holiday in some liturgical calendars. Well, we're right into religion already, aren't we? And then we're going to be into politics here presently here while you ponder this thing. Let's see what nonsense is being promulgated here. No, that's just not, just. That's somebody trying to sell me a Medicare Advantage insurance plan. Go away, go away. Let's not lose our train of thought. I might get into the politics stuff later. I thought this was a great quote, that's why I opened the video with it. I can't remember where I found it. I'm sorry, I found it on the internet, obviously. Ineptocracy, a system of government where the least capable to lead are elected by the least capable of producing, and where the members of society least likely to sustain themselves or succeed are rewarded with goods and services paid for by the confiscated wealth, note well that word confiscated, wealth of a diminishing number of producers. Without even getting into various people's opinions of the current, quote, leader of the free world, unquote, who I don't have a problem with really right at this point, but we'll see. That's a true statement. It's the tyranny of the majority. You know, now the majority must always be listened to. Ideally in a federal system, not a complete unitary. Now here we are in the politics again. Gosh. Let's get down to sort of like the straight diary principles involved in this particular channel. Last night, yesterday afternoon around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I got this very wonderful call from my neighbor Liz, and she says, well, come on over and we'll eat around 5:30, and she had this great sort of quasi-roast, quasi-boiled chuck roast in a roasting pan thing, and she had made some of these broad noodles, you know, and you put the broth on the noodles, and she had some green beans, and she had some corn, and she had made some biscuits. And Henry was there, and we had this great dinner. Now, I yearned to record, but some things are just not appropriate to record. Because Henry was telling all of these fantastic stories from his early days when he was chief of the beer and wine division in Ohio, involving, well, let's just say a number of very colorful characters from the northeast part of the state, about which I will say no more. But I haven't laughed so hard in many, many months. You know, I was giggling and tears were running down my face. And then there was the sweet Lucy dog, you know, the sweet Lucy dog, the sort of the giant quasi-French poodle doodle thing. And I'm the only stranger she'll interact with. She's a sweetheart. So that was fun. I got around 10:30, and of course then I had to, catch up on my stuff on the internet. But I had a good night's sleep. Thank God. Anyway, so here, that brings us to this morning, doesn't it? Now, my son Thomas had told me about this movie, American Psycho. And, along with that, of course, the book, American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Now, Bret Easton Ellis also wrote Rules of Attraction, which was also made into a movie. I don't have that book, nor do I have American Psycho, the book. But I did rent and screen record the movie American Psycho today from the YouTube site. It's called YouTube Movies is the name of the site, channel. YouTube Movie Channel. It was $3 to rent it. You get it for 48 hours, activate it anytime within 30 days after you rent it, and you can watch it. Well, or in my case, I've screen recorded it, which gives an acceptable quality thing, If you wanted to just flat out buy it for a download, it would have been $8. Which again, is not a bad price, I don't think. I haven't done that. I might do that for some things. Thomas had put me onto this. It's an interesting piece. If you are completely amoral, you'll find it exhilarating. If you have even the smallest shred of morality or human compassion or ethics or even aesthetics in terms of wanting people to look slightly differently from each other, you'll be profoundly depressed, but still absolutely mesmerized. Now, that's actually an interesting way to spend a couple hours around this noon. All right. Well, let's just get into it, and then if something else occurs to me, I'll say it. I have been peripherally involved. No, that's not even the right word. I have been more of a spectator to an extended exchange between two friends of mine involving some of these gay political issues, involving, gay bakers not wanting to make marriage cakes and things, and then the various court decisions, proving their one court decision said, yeah, you have the right to refuse to bake this cake. Another court decision said, no, you can't bake this cake. And then there's another case. Actually, there are 3 cases, and they're in 2 countries. I think there's. Well, quite honestly, I'm going to be quite open about it. Well, no, I'm just going to tell you. I get sent these links and I read this stuff. I'm aware of them, and I just don't get a hard on about any of this stuff. It just doesn't bother me. If somebody wants to bake you a cake, fine. If somebody doesn't want to bake you a cake, go somewhere else and get them to bake you a cake. If they don't want to write something on your cake, get the tube of stuff and squeeze it on the cake and write it yourself. It just doesn't bother me. This is not a big deal. I think to use the resources of the state to ruin a private businessman, whether you agree with his religious beliefs or ethics or not, it's ridiculous. And at the same time, and I don't think it happened the other way. I don't think the baker went after the people who. I don't know, there might have been some countersuits. See, I just don't. I don't read all this stuff that gets sent to me because I read it from other places. I have the gist of it. I don't take this stuff personally anymore. I don't think I ever really did take the fact that the world basically didn't have any use for people like me for a long, long time personally. I just knew that's the way the world worked. I didn't like it. I hoped it would change. I mean, back in the early 80s, I did what I could to try to change it. It's just not a big deal for me. It's too bad that the word marriage is the default word that gays are stuck with. They need to have their own word that's not, because I really do think that marriage is a term that's reserved for, men and women. But there's no equivalent word in the English language for two same-sex people to get in that type of relationship. And I've said this repeatedly, I'll say it again. If it weren't for the tax-favored status, of married people filing their taxes, I don't think any of this stuff would have ever come up. And if it were just a matter of leaving anything you want in your will to somebody, and that's the case, that's always been the case. You can leave anything you want to somebody in your will, whether you're married to them or not. Although some states have a thing like, you can't completely disinherit your spouse, that kind of, But in reality, a will would solve all the problems. Of course, then they talk about, going into the hospital when they're sick and all this. I never had a bit of problem going in with Paul. Now, admittedly, I'm a physician. Generally, you pull the doctor card, you can walk around anywhere you want. Anyway, so to get to the real problem here, I was having a joint conversation with these two guys. Well, as it turned out, there was a technical problem on one end because I guess Skype was messing up, and it was. It turns out it was. But given the general, how should we say, testiness of both parties, one certainly, I say this in love, but it's true. There was a certain degree of misunderstanding. I felt like, and I'll say, I felt like, and as I said in an email to one of them, I said, I felt like a helicopter hovering over two great ships, getting ready to collide in the open sea, in a fog bank, only to realize as they turned aside at the last instance that neither one of them had seen each other. I think there's a certain degree of truth to that. Well, I think there's a lot of truth to it, or I wouldn't have said it. And this gets me back to something that hit me really strongly when I was but a freshman at college. The essential isolation of any one individual from any other individual even though they think that they have some really close degree of connection. And that, I'm not even talking about physical connection. I'm talking about just mental connection. There's, even when you seem to come almost to congruence, there's still an unbridgeable gap. And I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about that in, well, really, since 1969, 1970. I know it's true. I haven't let it dominate my life. I don't tend to let it dominate my life in the future, but there is that underlying truth, I think. Meanwhile, the majority keeps confiscating stuff from the minority. Sometimes for the good, sometimes to feather various nests scattered hither and yon. So I'll say bye-bye, YouTubers.